You've heard a lot today about different ways STEM education can help develop the next generation of leaders. But let's talk about how that STEM education comes to be and how we can use it to make genuine impact on the world around us. So, right here you can see how our current education teaches us. We learn a lot of different subjects, all to a great degree of depth. We learn all about physics, chemistry, math, economics, but they're all segmented out. They're all separated into their different lines, and pretty much during our school, we stay in those lines. But the world isn't like that. The world looks more like this. A jumble of those same colors, those same subjects, those same fundamentals, but they're all mixed up, all blended together to create a brand new image that is our world. In school, so we're in school, we need to learn how to make things with real measurable impact because that's how we genuinely create a better place in our world. At school, these are the kind of problems we solve. We solve problems that are pretty repetitive, pretty basic, pretty limited in their scope. But these are the kind of problems we can solve. We can look at the world and we can say there are no affordable mobility solutions for people with full body paralysis. We can say there's no way for unemployed people in rural India to connect with employers. We can say many undocumented people can't access menstrual health resources even though they need it the most. And the way that we can solve these problems, the way that we can combine all of the subjects we learn in school to create one final project is called the design thinking cycle. So, what is the design thinking cycle? Today I'm going to be explaining this to you via the example of one of the projects I started, the Oxygen Planner app. It's an app to help hospitals all around the world budget their oxygen in times of crisis. It's an app that I created starting based on inspiration that I got at one of my internships. At an internship where I was learning about ventilators, and I was learning just without really the context of COVID, without the context of anything, just really how ventilators and hospital oxygen systems work. So the first step of the design thinking process is to empathize. It's to look at the world around you. It's to listen to everybody. Take account of all the global issues that you see around us. We see the global goals. We see all of this. But we need to think about what other people need. What are the problems we're ready to solve? What are problems that we can solve? We need to ask open questions. We need to listen to people's answers. In my case, this meant the world shutting down. It was COVID. Obviously, that's a massive problem, right? That's right in front of us, affecting all of us. And it was basically an environment where I felt like I wanted to do something to make an impact. I wanted to use my free time to make an impact and help address this pandemic that was harming us all. So the second stage is to identify problem. To think of every problem that you see. So COVID is the big problem, right? COVID is a general idea. But we need to also think, what are some specific problems within COVID? One of the problems was personal protective equipment. A lot of people didn't have enough masks. A lot of people didn't have ventilators. A lot of makeshift hospitals were starting up with minimal supplies. But one of the biggest problems, the one that I chose to address, was oxygen shortages, right? If you see here, there's lots of headlines all around me. So this is how I narrowed it down. I kept seeing more and more headlines. More and more things like oxygen shortages threaten total collapse of dozens of health systems. Lots of news about oxygen shortages all over the world, which means hospitals couldn't treat patients who they had the beds to treat. They had the people to treat, but they couldn't offer them service. And that all came down to hospitals weren't receiving enough oxygen. They weren't able to deal with the oxygen they had. So to identify this problem, I had to ask myself three main questions. How many people does it impact? Well, in this case, it impacts everybody in the world. Everyone in the world had the concern of getting COVID and potentially needing medical oxygen. And there's also a chance that their hospitals wouldn't have the right amount of oxygen. How strongly does it impact those people? Well, it's pretty much a matter of life and death. If you need oxygen and you can't get oxygen, there's a very low chance you can survive. So there's a really strong impact on the people you're touching. And finally, how many people have tried to address this problem before? The problem of oxygen shortages was a brand new problem, a new need arisen in the crisis of the pandemic. So for a lot of people, that meant that not many people had addressed it before. And so now I got to move from seeing this problem, choosing a specific target, to creating ideas and creating a goal statement. So I like to structure my goal statements in the way my goal is to help these people with this problem. In the case of the Oxygen Planner app, that meant my goal is to help hospitals all around the world with the problem of oxygen shortages. It's simple as that. You're basically defining your user, defining who you need to listen to, who you need to understand, and what you need to help them with, what you need to learn more about to help with. And that takes us to the third stage, ideate. Now is the time to take this large amount of different ideas, large amount of different possible ways to solve the problem you've found, and narrow them down to something that you can actually pursue to create that genuine impact. So you can start by thinking of everything. Don't throw any idea out. Always think of as many ideas as you can. And then you can start narrowing them down. Answer those same questions as before. How many people does it impact? How strongly can it impact those people? And how have people tried to do it before? In the case of the Oxygen Planner app, for me, it really came down to, would I do a fundraising effort? Would I raise money for hospitals to be able to buy more oxygen or buy equipment to generate oxygen? Or building a tool, which is creating a way for hospitals to more effectively budget their oxygen? Or finally, going and doing direct service, like maybe helping hospitals connect oxygen cylinders or help deliver oxygen cylinders or something like that. For me, the way I thought that I could create the most impact on the most people was creating a tool that could reach many, many hospitals worldwide without forcing me to raise millions of dollars. So that's what I did. I started with some basic sketches, as you can see, basic designs on the left, and moved to some more refined designs that help illustrate more effectively what exactly I wanted to create, planning out my app. And then that took me into the fourth stage of the cycle, initiate. This is where you actually create your impact. So in this stage, you might think, how am I going to create this impact? Great, I have this idea, but how would I do it? So we're all students, right? It's our job to learn again. It's our job to learn outside of the classroom, to take the skills we learn in the classroom. One of the biggest things we learn to do is to learn. And we can use the internet. We can use all the resources we have available to us to learn how to do things. I didn't know how to build an app when I built my app, but I learned as I went. Reach out to experts. I didn't know very much about oxygen shortages. I didn't know anything at all about ventilators. But I knew some people through my internship that I was able to reach out to and really get a stronger understanding of how those things worked, so I could make the impact I wanted to without needing magical knowledge. You can always reach out to somebody. You can send out cold emails. You can always learn more. And then actually build your project. Go through, build prototypes, create something basic, and then start elaborating on it. As you work on your project, you'll be able to develop something more and more effective as you go, because you'll start understanding, maybe this dial shouldn't be a dial, maybe it should be a switch, or something like that. And in that case, that meant releasing it. And the first time I released the app, I released it to the Google Play Store. It started growing, and it eventually ended up reaching about 200 hospitals worldwide. And I was pretty excited. I was submitting it to the Apple App Store. But that brings us to the fifth stage, iterate. Nothing's ever right the first time. I was reminded that very clearly when I got this email from Apple. My app was rejected from the App Store. And when I looked at this email, originally I was like, what? How can this happen? How could this app that's already helping 200 people in hospitals all over the world, that I've shown to doctors in India and they said it was genuinely useful, how could it not be minimally functional? But then I looked at the app again. I realized that nothing is ever right the first time, that things can always be better. And I looked at the app, and this is the key learning of the design cycle. You always need to iterate. So I started a second iteration of the app. You can see here, there's 3 iterations on the board, and the first version is the first app that I submitted that reached 200 hospitals, right? It looks okay, but then as I updated it, as I went through again, started from scratch all over again, with now the experience of having built one app, now I'm building the second app with the experience of building the first app. So the app ends up much better. And as I repeated through the cycle, it ended up reaching the third third iteration, which to this day has reached over 1,700 hospitals. So being able to do that, being able to go through the iterations of the design cycle is the key learning here. You always need to iterate, and you never need to be stuck in one step. Kill your darlings, they say. Even though I put 300 hours into the first app, I could always make it better. And that's one of the key learnings that us as students have to learn. A lot of times in school, when we submit a project, it's done. But in the real world, when we submit a project, it's only the chance for us to start receiving feedback, for us to hear from the people we're genuinely impacting and be able to make our project better. So what are some key takeaways from this? What are some key learnings from the design cycle that can help you guys, all as students, help you guys make a genuine impact? So, 1, learn as you go. You can always know something. You can always learn something as well. You have the world at your fingertips with the internet, and you're able to basically find any information you could possibly want. You can teach yourself things as you go, and you can approach learning in a way that's more unique and less linear like we're taught in school, and more, I'm learning about building an app, now I need to build a tab bar. Let me Google how to build a tab bar. So as you need something, you can always learn more. Don't restrict yourself. Even though you might feel like, I know this many things, I know these things well, and I want to do these things, you might find that the way you think can create the most genuine impact extends beyond those skills that you know or that you're comfortable with. You need to always be able to reach beyond your comfort zone to create the impact in like a new area. So I didn't know anything about ventilators, but that didn't stop me about creating an oxygen planner app. And since you have all this information at your fingertips, you should be able to learn all of those new information and be able to really create a broad project that's affecting more people. And finally, to focus on the user. To never assume a problem, but to always think about exactly what the user wants. And that a lot of that comes from listening. It comes from empathizing. It comes from understanding your user very well and talking with them and interviewing them many times. And that's the final takeaway, is to really understand that you're creating something for your user. You should never assume that you, as a person, as a creator of a product, are the one delivering the impact. They're the ones receiving the impact. They're the ones who you need to understand most. In the case of the app, what happened with me was once I created the project, I heard back great feedback that it would be cool to have a feature talking about time left on a cylinder. Because sometimes in ambulances, they need the time left on a current cylinder so that they can plan the rest of their ride to the hospital and see if they'll be able to make it. So we added that feature, and that feature has helped the app grow even more. So you guys have the world at your fingertips. We're students in an age where we can learn as much as we want outside of the classroom, outside of what we're formally taught, and it's your time to start. You can start making an impact right now by starting to empathize, by listening to the world around you. And then you can go through the cycle to create a genuine impact. It's your time to start. Start now.